Yo, what's up? Welcome to the opening line. Corey, the Cowboy, Benny, the Jet. Special edition opening line, Fantasy Football Elite Kickoff Edition. It is now that time of year to get rocking and rolling fantasy football season. Drafts will be starting up hot and heavy in a little bit over a month, Benny. Welcome back, Benny. Welcome you, Benny, to the 2019 season.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically the kickoff of the NFL season for me. We had the Scott Fish draft start up yesterday. That's going to be it's usually the first big one that I wind up doing. And then, from there on out, that's when I go into kind of football mode in July and August, right after the All-Star break, which is coming up for baseball. So yeah, I'm getting excited, man. Football, whether you like it or not, football is what drives fantasy. Football is the season that everybody's into. Your mom, your sister, your wife has a fantasy football team and an office pool and stuff like that. So it is what it is.
People follow football with such passion, and obviously fantasy football has been a big benefactor to that, and vice versa. Let's kind of start with Scott Fish Bowl, and one of the big industry drafts that sets everything off. Just about everybody in the industry is in it and gets involved, and they do a great job with fantasy cares and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The rules of the big tournament, Benny, are always interesting. This year they come back basically with the same format as last year, with the tight end getting points for first downs, and I believe an extra point for the reception also, making tight ends pretty valuable. Also being it's a super flex league, but when the league is a super flex, Benny, I go ahead and say it's a 2-quarterback because you want to be able to start a quarterback in that second slot every week. When it comes to yourself, how are you attacking and how are you approaching 2 QB leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the exact same thing. It's the same way for me. Like, this is a super flex league, but they max the number of quarterbacks you can start. So you can start up to 2 quarterbacks, or you could start like an extra 4 wide receivers or 4 running backs or whatever. You can't start 4 extra quarterbacks, though. But anytime you have the option to start 2 quarterbacks, you usually want to make sure you have 2 quarterbacks that you're going to be able to roll in every week. The reason why you definitely want to do it in like a Scott Fish Bowl, and the reason why most quarterbacks are gone by like the 6th round, they also give you bonus points. So you get bonus points, I think, for if a quarterback throws for 300 yards, you get like a +5 bonus this year. And it's also 6 points per passing touchdown as well. So when you look at, do I start this extra running, this 4th running back on my bench or this 5th wide receiver on my bench, or do I start the second quarterback? The second quarterback is always going to be more productive. So for me, it's stupid for you not to have at least 2 quarterbacks on your roster, if not even carry a 3rd one just in case, so you can cover bye weeks and, the eventual injuries that happen for everybody.
Yeah, no doubt. Late in the season, obviously, you'll see some people start some real weird name quarterbacks as they come off the bench and stuff like that. So, guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick and players like Ryan Tannehill, even going down to the depths of that level, maybe even Daniel Jones and Eli Manning, you'll see these guys end up on these teams because quarterbacks come at such a premium. Now, when it comes to the actual draft, Benny, I look at it kind of like as if the people at the front of the draft and those first couple, that probably those first 6 guys, they kind of determine how the quarterbacks are going to flow. If they come out and start hopping on quarterbacks early, they're going to dry up quick. I think you got to jump in there and get you one. But if they come out and they're relaxed and they're chilling and nobody's stretching and reaching for quarterbacks, you know what? Then you can kind of read the board and feel how it's going to go before you hop in there and get your 2 studs. Do you look to get 2 studs, a mid-tier guy and a stud, or 2 lower guys? What is your strategy when it comes to drafting in the 2-quarterback league?
Yeah, I'm again, that my overall draft strategy is somebody who usually waits late for quarterbacks to begin with. Last year, I wound up drafting my quarterbacks. I think I had the number 1 overall pick last year.
Nice.
I got both of my quarterbacks on the 4-5 turn.
Okay.
The guys that I ended up with were Mitch Trubisky, who because of the rushing yards, and I mean, he did have like 3 games last year where he threw for over 300. And he had that one game where he had like 5 touchdown passes that like basically won that week for me by himself. He was one of my quarterbacks. And then the other one was the combination of the 2 Tampa Bay quarterbacks. Yes. There weren't a lot left on the board. So I think I took Winston at that pick. And then sometime way later in the draft, I was able to get Fitzpatrick as well because people didn't want to draft him knowing he was going to lose his job as soon as Winston came back. Those 2 guys wound up throwing for 9 300-yard games on the season, which was the second most only to Pat Mahomes, who had 10 300-yard games in the entire league. So they combined to have more 300-yard passing games than Goff, Matt Ryan, Big Ben, and Andrew Luck, who were behind them with 8, 8, 8, and 7.
Yeah, no, that duo was very good for fantasy. As they would get benched and come back and get benched and come back, you start to see that quarterback was a guy mostly playing from behind, mostly playing in a free-flowing offense that was putting up big numbers. So that this year, that guy it shouldn't be no worries about who that guy is this year, Benny. And we can just start right here. This is a make or break year for Jameis Winston under Bruce Arians.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you've talked about it before. You got an offensive coordinator in there that's going to be pass heavy. So that should be good for him. We never minded the wide receivers that he has. The wide receiver weapons that he has are great. So there's no argument there. And they still, I know people really love Ronald Jones, and especially this time of year, there's a lot of
free Rojo.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk with the fantasy analysts about how great a year he's going to have. But the running game to me is still a question in Tampa Bay. Like, they're still going to be a passing team. That's their identity. That's what they rely on. That's how they really move the ball. So I still think Winston is a guy who's being slept on. And this is why I wait on quarterback, Corey. You look at where Winston is going in a lot of drafts, you're able to get this guy. Again, the Scott Fish Bowl is different because of some of the rules we talked about. But in your typical one quarterback draft that a lot of people are having with their friends at home or their coworkers or their family, this is a guy you can get around 12, around 14 in a lot of these, 10 and 12 team kind of drafts. So if I can wait to pick 120, pick 150 to get a guy like Winston who could throw for 7 or 8 300-yard games and be up there with, the Mahomes, the Goffs, the Ryans, the Big Bens this year, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. He's a nice quarterback, a nice piece if you're going to wait on. Listen, if he ends up getting benched, it happens, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not really too worried about that. I'm a believer in Jameis Winston, so there you go right there. O.J. Howard is an interesting name this year because with Howard, we all know the talent is so real.
Mm-hmm.
But now you bring in Arians. An Arians system really doesn't utilize the tight end. Most analysts think, well, O.J. Howard is too good not to be utilized.
I'm kind of on the fence about this one, to be honest with you. And here's the reason why I say it. When people start talking about O.J. Howard, he's going to be one of the tight ends that's probably like the top 8 guys off the board, right?
Top 5.
All right. I mean, I don't think he's top 5, but if he's going to be top 5 off the board, I'll have 0 shares of him, to be honest.
He's going to go after Evan Ingram. It's going to be the big 3, Evan Ingram, and then probably O.J. Howard.
Well, I would put Hunter Henry above him right there. So that's one guy that I would put above him. But you're right. He's probably like right behind there in that range, that 5, 6, 7, 8 range, because I think Ingram's better. And then the top 3, nobody's going to argue. Kelce, Ertz, and Kittle should go before him. My big thing here is this. It's like, all right, so maybe Arians is going to find some ways to use him, but you got guys like Ertz and Kelce and those guys that are up front that could catch 80 to 100 balls this year, that could wind up with 1,000 yards this year, that could have 5 to 10 touchdowns this year. O.J. Howard's a big target, so the touchdowns, maybe he can get 5 or 6 and be in that same range with them. But I don't think he's going to get anywhere near the volume, right? Like, this is a guy who's going to see, at most, maybe 4 or 5 balls thrown his way a game, at most.
Okay.
So, I mean, at most, you can hope for 3 or 4 catches for, again, he can stretch the field, so maybe he gets a 20, 30-yard catch, but to me, he's like a 4 for 40 kind of guy on his best-case scenarios. He may have one game where he breaks out, but, if you get 4 for 40 out of him, you got to be pretty happy with that. That's probably what you're going to see from him.
He's better than 4 for 40 talent. I think that would be a misuse of coaching because I think the guys is athletically and what he can do on the football field, not very many tight ends can do. I just worry about Arians' usage rate of tight ends. We've seen it in the past, most notably with Jermaine Gresham, who was going to be another breakout tight end star. And then Arians got that gig, and he kind of just misutilized him. We haven't heard much from Gresham since. But O.J. Howard comes with a lot of draft capital. So I'm going to be optimistic. I'll have shares when the time is right, you know what I'm saying? But he's going to be an interesting guy to watch throughout the course of the year. One Mr. O.J. Howard. Talking about fantasy football season getting kicked off. Obviously, things have kicked off also at fantasyguru.com. FG site, rocking and rolling right now. You want to hit on over there, sign up for the 2019 Fantasy Football Guide and Draft Kit. Take you all the way through the draft and all the way through Week 17. So hop on over to fantasyguru.com. Tell them the boys from the opening line sent you. Benny, the top of the board has 4 running backs that are mainly have people talking about as the consensus guys. It's Ezekiel Elliott, it's Saquon Barkley, it's Alvin Kamara, and it's Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to start with McCaffrey. Make a case for why CMC should be the first guy off the board.
So if you're going to make the case for why he should be the first guy off the board, you have to be playing in a PPR.
Yes.
Right? Because if you're not playing in a PPR, then I don't think you can make a case for him being the first guy off the board. So if you're going to make the case for him, I love Christian McCaffrey. I have him as the number 2 running back in this year's draft. So if you see me in a draft and I have the number 2 pick, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey because to me, the number 1 guy is Saquon Barkley. So if I got to make the case for McCaffrey, here's the case that I'm going to make. The case that I'm going to make is that the Giants are going to run Saquon Barkley into the ground because they don't have a lot on that offense. He's going to be a guy that has to carry the ball 15 times a game and probably see 5 to 10 passes thrown his way as well. If you're taking McCaffrey over Barkley, what you're really saying is you think that teams are going to be keying on Barkley and he's not going to have the success that he had last year, or that he's going to be injured. Otherwise, as much as I love Christian McCaffrey, let's face it, McCaffrey's a guy who last year, you could almost pencil him in for 100-plus yards every game. May not be 100 yards rushing, might be 50 rushing, 70 receiving, 60 receiving, 75 rushing, something along those lines. But you could basically pencil him in for 100 total yards and a touchdown every game, and you knew he was going to catch a couple passes because he catches a lot of passes out of the backfield. I love him as the number 2 pick in the draft. It's really tough for me to make a case that he's better than Saquon Barkley unless you really hate the Giants' offense or you think that Barkley's going to get injured and not make it through the year.
I can agree. Listen, it's tough. Like you said, Saquon Barkley probably is 1-1. You've kind of already made the case for Barkley going number 1 overall. We know that that's your guy. Make the case for Ezekiel Elliott at 1-1. Elliott has, no suspension coming, nothing to worry about on that front. Elliott, since he stepped in the NFL, has been the NFL's leading rusher. His rookie year, he led the league in rushing. His second season until he got suspended, he was leading the league in rushing. And then once again, last year, he led the league in rushing. But last year, we also saw 77 receptions. That's something a lot of people don't know. Make the case for Zeke to be 1-1.
Well, you just made that case right there. The guy, 700-yard rushing games tied him with Saquon Barkley last year for the most in the league. Like you said, the guy leads the league or is up there leading the league in rushing every time he puts on a uniform and is out there. And you know that offense is centered around him being the running back. The knock on him had always been, like you said, that he doesn't catch the ball out of the backfield. 77 is a lot of catches.
Yeah,
I think what did that have him third last year behind the other 2 guys we talked about already?
Yeah.
So you're right there in that same area right there. I would say this. In a non-PPR, you can easily make the case for him to get it because he's the guy who's probably going to wind up leading the league in rushing. He also is going to get a lot of touchdowns because he always winds up getting a lot of touchdowns. In a half PPR or in a full PPR, it's really not that far off. Like there used to be a big gap between the guys who caught passes and also ran the ball and Ezekiel Elliott because he didn't catch those passes. Remember, in a full PPR, every one of those 77 catches is an extra point. When he was only bringing in 40, 45 catches a year, that's a good 30 points that you're giving up there, plus the yards that went along with it. If ever there was a case to be made for Saquon Barkley to be ahead, for Zeke to be ahead of Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey, this is the easiest year to make that case because if he's going to keep going on this, 80 catches is 5 catches a game. If he's going to get your 5 catches a game to go along with 700 or 800-yard rushing games and all the touchdowns he scored, he's right there with these other 2 guys. There's really not a lot of margin of error between them.
I think one of the reasons why people don't take Zeke 1-1, first of all, there's still this narrative out there that he doesn't catch enough passes. But people that's not really paying attention. Number 2, the Dallas Cowboys offense is methodical. It's big, long.
Yes. Slow.
This is 10, 12, 11-play drive, just tick, 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 tick. 8-9-minute drives that go. Sometimes they have 8-9-minute drives, Benny, and move the ball 30 yards. I've seen it happen before.
No, but pace of play is a big thing. You look at the difference between the number of plays the Kansas City Chiefs run versus the number of plays that the Cowboys run. The thing that saves Zeke, though, that doesn't make me that nervous about him is the amount of those touches that go his way.
Exactly.
Even if they're only running 50 plays, he's getting 50% of them, if not more, with the ball in his hand.
And while other running backs make those big explosive highlight plays, Ezekiel Elliott is just constantly churning you down 4 or 5 yards a pop. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's make people think that those other two backs are better. Last guy I need to make a case for at 1-1 is Alvin Kamara. Obviously, with no Mark Ingram, you got to feel real strong about basically the guy that the Saints run their offense through in Kamara.
Well, I mean, the case that you make for Alvin Kamara going 1-1 is the first 4 weeks of last season.
Yeah.
So the first 4 weeks of last season, when there was no Mark Ingram there, Alvin Kamara won people millions of dollars in DFS. He was putting up just eye-popping, ridiculous numbers as the lead back who was also – we always knew he could catch balls out of the backfield. That's the role that they gave him. He's so good at that role that he became a fantasy asset even when he was part-time in that role. Now, if you're also going to give him 12 to 15 carries a game to go along with it, if he's going to start getting some of the goal line work, there's no Ingram there, who was a guy that, vultured a lot of the goal line work, a lot of the close-up touchdowns there. Also, a lot of the running at the end of the game when you're just trying to run out the clock. Now, again, we don't know, is this guy going to be like a super workhorse where they give him 25 carries a game? Probably not. You don't want Kamara breaking down like that. You don't take your Ferrari around the block to go to the to go to pick up ice. You know what I mean? You keep your Ferrari for when you're going out and you're cruising. So they may kind of limit him a little bit there. But, man, I still think he's in for a really, really big year. And big games from Kamara are like, 150, 200 total yards and multiple touchdowns. And we saw that early last season. So the case to make for him is go back and watch the first couple games of the Saints season last year, and you can understand why Kamara has people so excited.
I remember a couple of years ago, his rookie season, the game he got actually the game that he got hurt in, where he had the concussion. He had that concussion on he had a concussion on the first drive of the game. And I'm like, oh, Lord, he had a concussion the first drive of the game. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to give me nothing. Do you know he had 7.7 fantasy points when he went out?
There was a game last year that I remember with him where he had, or 2 years ago, his rookie year, where he had like 8 touches in the whole game.
Yeah.
He had like 30-something fantasy points. It was like 8 touches. He had like 2. He caught a pass, took it to the house. He took like a 30-yard run to the house. Like the guy, every play could be a highlight reel with this guy. And that's the thing. When you have a guy this explosive, if you're going to double his touches or at least give him more consistent touches, he could he's going to have some monster weeks. He's going to win. As a guy who plays a lot of daily fantasy, this is a guy who's going to have those 40-point weeks every once in a while where you either played Kamara or you're just starting your research for next week because it's over.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You might as well go on ahead Monday night to the Monday-Thursday slate because it's not going to happen for you today. When you look at the wide receivers, obviously some shakeup at the top with some big names changing teams with Odell Beckham and Antonio Brown. But I want to start with probably the guy that everybody says is a consensus. It's kind of like when you talk about wide receiver one, it's DeAndre Hopkins, it's Devontae Adams, and it's Michael Thomas. Which way do you go? How would you rank those three?
Yeah, I mean, I put D-Hop up there number one. He's my favorite of all those three. Last year he had 700-yard receiving games, and he had a couple games down the stretch where he was banged up. In the Scott Fish Bowl especially, you get points for first downs. DeAndre Hopkins led the league in first down receptions last year. I think he had – I had it written down here somewhere. He had 81. Julio Jones had 80. So those were the two guys that are up at the top of the list. It's very close for me between D-Hop and Julio, though, because Julio actually had more 100-yard games last year than DeAndre Hopkins did. Julio had 10, Mike Evans had 8, Juju had 8, and D-Hop was 4th with 7, which is, it's still a very big number, and it's not like any of these guys are that far off from the rest. But the question to me really comes down to Julio and D-Hop, and that's not a knock on Michael Thomas either, because I love Michael Thomas. He was another guy. He was 3rd behind Julio and D-Hop in first down receptions. So he's another guy in the Scott Fish Bowl that's going to have a little bit of a bump up for it. Not a lot of leagues play with that first down reception thing, so it's not something you got to worry about in your standard league. In your standard league, I still think it's very close between Julio and D-Hop. I still go D-Hop, but I'm not going to argue if anybody goes the other way with it.
Now, Julio Jones is always going to be a staple, and he gets back into a situation this year where he's working with Dirk Cutter, which, well, obviously, when Dirk Cutter was the OC back in Atlanta back last time, that's when you saw more of Julio in the end zone. So that's a good thing for him. Antonio Brown in Oakland should be a target monster. Obviously, Odell Beckham, if he's healthy and on the field, he's going to put up some video games numbers too. So it's pretty deep and loaded around at wide receiver. Benny, when you look at this rookie class, the past couple years, we've had names like Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley, guys that have stood out as, okay, this is a guy I need to own. This year, not that many when it comes to the rookie class. You see N'Keal Harry, you see Josh Jacobs. Who are some of the rookies you think could have a fantasy breakout this season?
Well, I mean, you named the two guys that are at the top of the list. The only other guy I would put up there with them is Kyler Murray, because we're expecting him to start right from the jump, and this is a guy that's going to be in an offense that we're expecting. Again, we don't really know because we haven't really seen it, but we're assuming that Kingsbury is bringing his offense with him to the NFL, probably modified a little bit. You know, there's a couple of those things that may not work when every guy on the other side of the ball runs a 4.5 40 that work when you're, you know, playing college teams where there's one guy with a 4.5 and everybody else is,
sometimes that offense can work a little bit better to the guy. That offense can work a little bit better. You know, when you're playing against the University of North Texas, there's North Texas on your schedule in the NFL.
Well, I mean, a lot of that philosophy, a lot of that stuff, as we saw with
the air raid offense.
Yeah, I mean, even the, you know, the up tempo and stuff like that we saw with like Chip Kelly when he was with the Eagles. A lot of that works better in college because if you go and you get the athletes, that you have better athletes than the other team, a lot of that is predicated on just having so much speed on the field that you're able to do it. In the NFL, though, everybody's fast.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in college, there's a couple guys that are fast. In the NFL, you know, you have linemen that are running sub-5 40s. You have guys in the defensive backfield that are running 4.4s. You know what I mean? Like, when you have everybody's speed on both sides, a lot of that stuff doesn't work out as well because it relies on, you know, precision timing and just overall athleticism. And in college, there's definitely a way to get more athletic than some of the teams you're playing. You know, when 9 of their starters are going to be accountants next year and 9 of your starters are going to be in the NFL, you know, there's a big difference in the athletic level. At the NFL, though, everybody's a stud athlete. So, you know, some of that stuff doesn't work out as well. It'll still be the same type offense, but there's going to be things that work that he did, and there's going to be things that don't work. And it's going to take a little while to find that out. But you still expect Kyler Murray to pick up yards with his legs and with his arm. You know, rookie quarterback going in there and being handed the keys to the kingdom right away. I expect him to have a big year. Because like you said, outside of N'Keal and Jacobs, who else do you really like in this rookie class? I mean, there's a lot of guys that I'm like, you know, that dynasty season maybe, but not really looking for big years out.
I want to see some more what's going on in training camp and, you know, in preseason once that gets started to get a good look at some of these guys and kind of see how some of these rosters shake up. Because one of these guys is going to finish in the top 12, especially one of these running backs. I guarantee you that. Just got to figure out who that guy is. Is it Jacobs? I don't know right now because how much is he going to be running on a team that might win 6 games? But what I will say is this is not going to be N'Keal Harry. And I know a lot of people are drafting him and high on him, Patriots wide receiver and stuff like that. The New England Patriots only throw the football to Julian Edelman, the running backs, and Rob Gronkowski when he was there. Name me the Patriots rookie wide receiver who's ever made it. You can't. It doesn't happen.
Who is it? They had a kid 2 or 3 years ago.
I know exactly who you're talking about. He flamed out.
It wasn't like he was a stud either, but it was.
He flamed out. Everybody thought he was going to be a stud. He flamed out.
He was a high draft pick the next
season.
Malcolm Mitchell. There you go. He was a high draft pick the next season too, because everybody's like, "Oh man, if he did that as a rookie in New England, imagine what he's going to do next year." But yeah, I mean, you look at the rookie wide receivers. Like, you know, I like Hollywood Brown. I like his skill set, but I don't think he's going to get the targets and all that this year. Again, DK Metcalf, you've been on since the beginning. You know, look like
Tarzan, play like Jane.
We're already hearing that out of camp right now, that he's not going to be somebody who winds up being a major part of what they're looking to do there. So really for me, I mean, I'm not that high on this rookie class, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And I think the NFL teams were that way too. I mean, you saw how many linemen and defensive players went in the first round of this last draft. You know, it was more of a defensive-heavy draft than it was a draft with a bunch of offensive.
Next year's draft will be more offensive-minded. You'll see players like Jeremy Jeudy come out next year. You'll also see Cam Akers that come out next year, DeAndre Swift. So next year will be an interesting rookie class as far as fantasy goes. This year's maybe not so much. So there you go with that stuff right there. You talk about the late quarterbacks and some of the things that we've happened and seen go down over the course of the offseason that leads us up to just about fantasy football elite kickoff for 2019. When it comes to sleepers and guys you get a little bit later on in the draft, something's going to happen with that second wide receiver in Pittsburgh. Is it going to be James Washington or Dante Moncrief?
I mean, listen, we're hearing – I was on James Washington thinking it was going to be him, but we're hearing a lot more coming out of Dante Moncrief. I think both guys deserve to be drafted, though, and deserve to be put on a team. I don't think what you're going to – I mean, Juju is still going to get Juju's targets. And he got his targets last year, too, even with Antonio Brown there. I don't think one of those guys is going to get all the Antonio Brown targets. You know what I'm saying? So Juju already being a guy who saw a lot of targets last year, like, you can't really expect a major jump in Juju's targets. Like, do you think he's going to have 200 targets this year? Like, I don't think he's going to do that. So, you know, maybe he gets an extra target or two a game, but that still leaves like 7 or 8 targets that got to go somewhere else. And I don't think you're going to see all 8 of them go to Moncrief or to Washington. I think both of those guys are going to wind up seeing them. So I don't think you have to say one or the other. If the 2 of them are on the board and you're asking me which one I'm going to draft, honestly, I have Washington ranked higher, so he's still up there. But I went from Moncrief being like not even really on my radar to literally being right behind Washington and, like, you know, in that same –
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Benny. I think you rank those 2 players the same. Also, I would look at that Green Bay Packers situation with Geronimo Allison and MVS, Marquise Valdez-Scantling. That could be a sleeper situation develop also. Another player.
Wait, hold on. Before you move on from there, who do you like better in that situation? Because I have a clear choice.
Geronimo.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think I would take Allison way before I took MVS.
Yeah, Geronimo is the guy. Matter of fact, a report came out last week about Allison as a player that is going to have is going to get a lot of touches and could be in for a breakout season this year. So Geronimo Allison is that guy for me. MVS was kind of a creation of Geronimo Allison getting hurt last year. It's this kid in Dallas, Tony Pollard. Obviously, Ezekiel Elliott's going to be the man right there. But they don't want to punish Ezekiel Elliott as more as they did until late in the season. Cowboys think they're going to make a deep run this year, so they want to have Zeke load management. This guy, Tony Pollard, is a player whose NFL comp is Alvin Kamara. He's somebody for the last round in your draft or a player to put a star next to see if he's a guy that can pop off the waiver wire. There's a couple of late guys that come to mind right now. Obviously, Kyler Murray will go late. I think he'll have some action. Don't sleep on Lamar Jackson this year, too, because I think running the football, he'll be able to get a lot done, and his air game will improve. So anybody else that you're looking at late, Benny, before we get out of here?
Not really. I mean, you know, a lot of the guys that I'm looking at later on in these drafts are going to be guys that are backup running backs that I'm going to be, you know, trying to see. The kid Pollard wasn't really on my radar. Do you think he's going to wind up being a backup in Dallas? So
yes, he'll be the backup.
So if Zeke gets hurt, he's the workhorse.
He won't be the workhorse, but he'll be in the mix. But they like him a lot. They like his skill set a lot.
Well, basically what I'm saying is, like, you know, obviously if he's kind of like a Kamara, he's going to be a guy that's catching passes, right? So third down work, stuff like that. But do you think he can handle the load of also being like, you know, again, if Zeke gets hurt, can he take 15, 20 touches?
I think that'll be the player most likely to get it. So there you go, right there.
Interesting. That's definitely somebody I'm going to be looking at a little deeper here then.
So you got that situation. But listen, guys, most importantly, as we kick off Fantasy Football Elite for 2019, make sure you head on over to fantasyguru.com. Get in there, get signed up, get all the great work. Draft Kit is live and lit, available right now. You know what I'm saying, Benny? So it was good kind of doing a little welcome to fantasy football with you.
Yeah, I'm actually on the clock in the Scott Fishbowl draft right now. So let me go and make my pick right now while we sign off.
So there you go right there. For Benny the Jet, I'm Corey the Cowboy, the opening line. We are out.